Hello. Welcome everyone to Rehash the Rolls. We were having some technical difficulties there, so glad that we can be with you now. Uh, Before we get into the questions that everyone sent in, got a couple of announcements to get out of the way. Firstly, this Friday is the exciting start to our new mini series, Heroic Tales of Rosewood Hall. Lydia will be our DM for that. I'll be there, as will be a few familiar faces and a few unfamiliar faces. So please be there for that. It should be a great time. And a reminder to those who may have missed the announcement or uh, Ready to Roll is still every other week, but will now be every other week on Thursdays. So next week, Thursday, is when we will return with the next episode of Ready to Roll. All of these events starting at the usual 7 o'clock Mountain, 9 o'clock Eastern. And with that out of the way, let's get to our guests. Sarah, who plays Galena, and Ian playing Piotr. Welcome.
Howdy.
How you doing?
Doing good. We battled with some technical issues a little bit before stream. Looks like on a few fronts, and I'm gonna breathe, and we're gonna have a good time. So excited.
Yeah. Well, we definitely have a good amount of questions today, and of course, we're all very excited for Sarah being on the program now and appearing here for the first time as a Ready to Roll cast member. So let's start with quick question for Ian. Is Piotr afraid of boats?
No. Did he say something that made somebody think he was? I mean, granted, I guess you're asking on behalf of somebody.
Yeah, I guess
unless
I
this
don't
is
really...
your question.
Nope. Nope.
I can't think of anything that would have made him afraid of boats.
Perhaps it was something about the voyage that you weren't looking forward to, but
yeah,
not the boat itself.
Ian is drawing a blank, but no, not afraid of boats.
Okay. For those who asked. And so as kind of a similar vein to that, where'd that question go? It's a great one.
Balconies, yes. Boats, no.
Yeah. But does Piotr realize that those headaches are associated with his line of sight to Galena?
He will eventually. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's only happened once so far. I'm sure he'll figure it out, though.
I think it was
maybe it's happened a couple times.
Like but one of the times it was just like barely for a second kind of thing, and then it was really noticeable at the nighttime party.
Yeah, I would imagine as time goes on, he'll he will put 5 and 2 together and figure out hopefully a way to break the curse. I don't know what you do when you've messed with Maeve in such a way, but
I mean, I don't know exactly what Maeve is, but being a fey creature, if deals work similar to hags, I mean, you made the deal. It's kind of like you got a killer to get out
it's
of
over
most of the time. but Patrick might have some other plans in mind. Um, as a follow-up for Sarah, if this is figured out and presented to Galena, how would she feel about having this dude she just met constantly staring at her?
I'm interesting to see. I'm interested in seeing how Piotr puts this to her. So at this point, I don't know how she's going to react. It's going to depend on how he frames it. But so far, with him talking about dreaming of her and destiny and all that kind of stuff, it's going to be a fun scene.
So the word salad did not do it for her, is what you're saying.
No, I don't think she puts much stock in destiny, and she's never had prophetic dreams before, so or ones that are communicating something.
Well, maybe Piotr just has to win her over with his charisma.
It's an 18. Roll some dice. Yeah, I wanted it. I wanted that scene to convey not only just Piotr's reticence for that sort of thing. He's like, and I think throughout the episode we kind of saw like, okay, fine, like I'm supposed to like babysit this woman or whatever. Um, but he didn't want to inconvenience her. He didn't want to literally like be glued to her constantly, and so I think we've got some fun things that'll be coming out over the next few episodes.
Yeah, awesome. Then, so yeah, this is something I've been curious about for Sarah. Galena, does sh does she recognize that she is from a different time?
Mm.
She knows, let's just say her grasp of time is a little bit loose
Mhm.
because
Of
if you
spoilers.
don't have a calendar and you're not marking off every day as you go, she
Uh,
more notices the change of seasons. And if you haven't really been a part of the world, you've been kind of tucked away and not participating in any of that, she has no idea what's been going on. So I don't think she really does have any clue about what the rest of the world is like.
gotcha. I won't press for details about why those scenarios are where she's coming from, but that does sound like an interesting plot to follow. Being that it seems like Galena has had a relatively long and peaceful life, uh, does the prospect of battling a cult set on resurrecting the worst power imaginable scare Galena at all?
She was looking for adventure because she's been bored. But I'm not sure how much stock she puts in what they've said. Because once again,
Mm,
she thinks her mother was exaggerating all the dangers out in the world. And these people that she's just met talk about destiny and saving the world. I think she thinks they have delusions of grandeur, but they're sure going to be interesting.
yeah. Uh, well, when Galena is disillusioned rather than that, that should also be pretty fun. Now over to Ian again. So Zelanya insisted that the party was past the point of secrets and kind of pressed on Pyotr to get him to talk about his past, but he still held back some very specific key details about Katya and the situation surrounding her death. So does he have trouble trusting his party members, or is it more a personal disgust, not really wanting to admit to himself uh, what he did?
I mean, there's definitely kind of some conflict there on a number of different levels. Like, obviously, he just met this woman, um, and I'm sure with time we're gonna see him open up. Maybe sooner rather than later. I don't. Piotr slash Ian has not really made that decision. But we've also got an issue, at least I guess Piotr has an issue where he hasn't come to terms fully with the moral implications of what he did, if that makes sense. If you recall back in the beginning or towards the beginning of the campaign, when, what was it? Oh, there's the tree that they were trying to get fruit from, I think. I can't remember precisely. But anyway, Piotr went to take the fruit, was repulsed, and then they heard the voice that called him a murderer, and he was kind of indignant about that. Technically, yes, he is absolutely a murderer, but he, as people often do, has a pretty high degree of charity for himself or towards himself. Um, all of that is to say, there's a lot going on in Piotr's head, and so he's not sure. He hasn't fully come to grips with just kind of the moral implications of that, and so talking about it to a new person for him is kind of like okay, it would be great, for example, for him to be able to bring Galena up to speed, but in a sense, he's still not up to speed as far as that's concerned, if that makes sense.
Right, gotcha. Yeah, and I guess I don't know if the person asking this question was thinking about this. I definitely forgot that Galena was there at that point in the but yeah, definitely her being there. It's not necessarily lack of trust of the companions you've been traveling with for so long, but yeah, having someone you haven't known definitely mess with that. Add to that being further shaken into a new quandary about bounty hunters and Maeve and
Yeah, and like Maeve, who he definitely does not trust, is telling him to, like, join forces with this woman who he doesn't know, who apparently isn't aware that she's been locked, like cryogenically frozen or something for 200 years. So he, there are a lot of question marks in Piotr's mind right now, that he would like to kind of suss out for sure.
yeah. Well, let's move to question for both. So during Piotr's dream, Maeve said that Galena, this woman he was going to meet, was the key to unlocking further power. You guys have any theories about what that is? I guess first, Sarah, do you know what that is, or no idea?
I have absolutely no idea. That was the
Yeah,
first I'd heard of that.
She's like,
I
well,
yeah, I would
this
expect
wasn't in my backstory.
but yeah, so you guys have any theories about that?
No, I'm really bad at this sort of thing. um, so no, I mean, I guess Piotr would have to get to know Galena more. That would be that's my call.
Without too many spoilers, Like, is there anything you can think of from your past that could have a connection to a higher power?
There were parts of my backstory that I left very vague for Galena, and I told Patrick to have fun.
Oh no.
Yeah. Well, then I imagine that is what
She's
is
like, and I'm
gonna
pretty sure that's where this is coming from.
happen. Well, I guess coming in, uh, what are Galena's thoughts around the party? How are they doing in terms of a first impression?
Well, they were very good at getting rid of the raiders that were chasing her with axes. So you have the whole the enemy of my enemy is my friend thing going on. And then when we got to the city, she wouldn't have been able to get in without them. So they have access to places that she doesn't on her own. So at the moment, she can go places and see things that she wouldn't be able to see without them on her own. So right now, she figures it's worth it to stick with them. But as for like, does she trust them? They just told her that this guy is being chased by bounty hunters. For all she knows, he deserves it. She doesn't know why she should stop them from catching him.
Spoiler alert.
She's not going to go out and find them and turn him in at this point, but she also doesn't see why she needs to jump in front of the arrow to save him. Might deserve to get caught.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, and I mean, maybe Piotr's going to come to the same conclusion. Um, all right. Well, let's keep rolling. Like I said, we got a lot of nice ones tonight. Um, for Ian, let's talk a bit about the dream. So
uh,
for you as a player, what was going through your mind when your dream was invaded by Maeve?
I distrust Maeve, and so does Piotr. So I was like, what? But at the same time, because so just to kind of, and obviously I'm sure this is kind of apparent to most of the viewers who have been watching. Um, the first dream sequence with Piotr was completely my idea. I just kind of came up with it almost on the spot. And me and Patrick had kind of talked about this general idea to kind of tell some of Piotr's story and really get into his head. But I just basically messaged Patrick. I almost said Piotr. Messaged Patrick, other P word, um, and was like, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking." We were approaching what I thought was going to be kind of a lull story wise, and he's like, "Yeah, that's actually a good idea." And then, anyway, so wait, I just totally derailed myself. What was the? Oh, what did he think about Maeve? Okay, yeah, that was completely pointless. I don't know why I went on that tangent, but you're welcome. Um, Piotr, the idea of having Maeve in the dream, in a sense, because he thought, you know, and I thought, quite frankly, I was like, crap, the balcony again. That means there's going to be another one of these stinking dreams. But then it was Maeve, and I was like, oh, at least, I'm not reliving the scene of this murder that I committed. So there could have been worse people to see at the top of that balcony. However, it was Maeve, so there aren't many people who could have been worse. Um, so yeah, Piotr doesn't trust Maeve. Uh, I mean, Maeve has helped them, so there is some earned trust, but there's certainly not any implicit trust, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's interesting. Like, oh, not this again, not the bell. Oh, it's just Maeve. You
It's Maeve. Yeah,
know.
kind of like that. Maeve?
Um, so kind of a very related question. If Piotr then is so distrustful of Maeve, why didn't he think a little more closely about Maeve's wording before agreeing to the task of having Galena be part of the party and him having his eyes on her, or whatever her exact wording was there?
Good question. Piotr knows better, so shame on him. He's grounded. No more PlayStation for a week. And yeah, he just needs to think about what he's done. Yeah, honestly, that that was probably more of a player thing, if we're being 100% honest. But yeah, Piotr done goofed, and now he's got to like stalk this woman, and it's going to be hilarious because at some point he's going to have to explain to her the lengths to which he is going to have to go in order to fulfill the end of his promise, the end of the agreement. And I guess also probably kind of what was going through Piotr's mind was that, you know, the whole bit with Galena wasn't so much, hey, like a deal that he had struck with Maeve, so much as, hey, like, you know what, we have common goals. Um, to kind of advance these goals. This is a person you probably want to keep close. So that's kind of what was going through Piotr's mind, if that makes sense, rather than I'm going to give you this, like, put this person in your path, and in return, you have to, like, almost all but literally glue your eyeballs to the back of their head or whatever. So yeah, that's probably more or less what was going through Ian slash Piotr's mind, kind of
Yeah,
the thought
yeah.
process.
Watch out for those Fae. Yeah, definitely pretty tricky about those kinds of things. Let's go to another question for both of you. Uh, how did your characters feel about the conversation with Kadiok's father? And despite what the Boyar has said, are they worried that a war between the two sides is going to be breaking out?
I mean, well, Sarah, I'll let you go first because I've talked a lot the last like 4 minutes.
She was just tagging along. She's pretty naive. She didn't understand what was going on. She didn't understand when she headed towards Nurse say that things were going to be quite that difficult there. So she doesn't really understand everything that's going along.
Right, right.
So Piotr originally, when they were talking to um, Kadiak's father, his instinct in that moment, kind of what was going through his head was, you know what, I need to help these people, like see the wickedness of their ways. Like, look, I'm talking to this father who's grieving the death of his son as a result of just this like fanatical obsession with war and violence. Um, and so it's like, oh, what am I going to do? But it was just, you know, that's kind of Piotr's headspace. He is a person who seeks institutional, structural, cultural change and adaptation and ways to implement those. So it was kind of a fleeting thought. He's definitely worried about the prospect for war between these two peoples, particularly because not only, I mean, and it's kind of a complicated position for him, right? He has done work to counteract Norsean raids or more just kind of coordinating, between principalities and things like that. Um, but not only that, he's fought alongside one of these people. Um, and when they talked to the individual it might have been an unnamed NPC who was like, "Oh, we're gonna kill all those Norsean people," yada yada yada. That was kind of, even if that's just something that's kind of something that's whispered amongst the people on the streets and in the taverns, those sorts of things tend to swell up. If they're not coming from the top down, they tend to swell up and eventually affect the way territories are governed and things like that. And Piotr is someone who has, um, in his line of work before, the divine kidnapping, as I refer to it, um, has worked to, in his eyes, counteract the unnecessary shedding of blood. Um, ironically, um, and so, or prevent the unnecessary shedding of blood. So, and as he kind of feels this link now in a more personal yet obviously complicated way to the Norsean people, he's certainly worried.
I guess was Piotr a part of the conversation with the boyar? Because while the boyar did say like, "Okay, Jelania, we understand your reasoning and we will support you uh, in your efforts here. We won't go off." But I think the boyar also said that as soon as this problem was taken care of that you guys are working on, that he would request uh, from the Tsar to not only allow them but have aid in going and fighting the Norse.
Do the war crimes or whatever wars. um, Sorry, what was the question?
Was Piotr there for that? And am I remembering that correctly? That the boyars
Good question. I recall not.
yeah.
Patrick, I know you're here somewhere. Send us a chat. I'm gonna check the on. I don't think he was for some reason.
I feel like that's definitely
No. Lydia says we all were, or she thinks.
okay.
Anyway, and that's kind of my thought as well. For whatever reason, yeah. Okay. The consensus is that we were all there. For whatever reason, I was thinking I wasn't. And then I was like, but where was Piotr in that case? So yeah, no, yeah, we were all there. So yeah, everything I said pretty much stands. Either way, really. Obviously Piotr has seen or heard more, more aptly what people are kind of thinking and saying, and that worries him.
Yeah. 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 It makes me wonder a lot too about how that could change. I mean, basically, they're proposing genocide. It's it's what they want to happen, right? No more
That,
Norse means no more invaders.
that's one thing that Galena found interesting. These people were carrying a dead Norsean back to his family, so he was obviously important to them because you don't just carry a dead body that far if it's not someone that was important to you. And then they had a conversation with his family as they dropped him off. And then we get back to that scene in the castle where they're talking about wiping out all the Norseans. And she's looking around like, okay, they had a friend who's Norsean. When are they going to say something? Nothing. Nothing. Okay, then.
Yeah. Of course, with Piotr understanding diplomacy, he probably would have agreed with the way that was handled. Like, we're
Yeah, I
not going to
mean,
convince them to love the Norse right now.
yeah, getting being summarily executed or like mob bullied on the spot is probably not going to fix many issues where that's concerned.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would imagine that would be confusing for someone who was just cut, copied, and pasted into the situation, or just like dropped into the situation the way that Galena was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if they were your friend, not necessarily that you could stop what was going to happen, but they didn't seem to be saying very much in the they're not all bad, maybe you shouldn't wipe them all out kind of a vein is she was waiting for.
Yeah.
Valid.
And I think it is definitely competing camps there. Like Galena's totally got a valid point there. Like you should stand up for what's right. This is someone you care about. Why aren't you standing up for them? Doesn't make sense. But then there's also just if we can convince them to hold off, then we can make more steps.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Whereas, I guess, kind of from Piotr's perspective, starting a battle on those grounds at that very moment when the attack, as far as they were concerned, wasn't even going to be happening right away. Um, they were kind of thinking, like, listen, we need to build a coalition for now. We don't need to be driving wedges
yeah,
at this stage.
yeah. Very interesting to see how that's going to play out. Um, on a related note, with Kadiok's death specifically and more in general, what are Piotr's feelings regarding the recent drastic changes in party members?
Yeah, it's been kind of chaotic. Piotr liked Drith, and so that's going to be hard for him. Um, and at the same time, Piotr hasn't felt at home in a very well, however many days it's been in game, and so he he was insecure anyway. He was kind of starting to get to a point where he was feeling more secure with at least more parts of the party, more members of the party. Um, and then it just kind of got shooken up. Although, to be fair, generally speaking, up until Galena came onto the scene, it was just people were leaving, which is not quite the same as new people coming in. But anyway, I'm rambling again. All that is to say, it's turbulent for him, but such is life sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Especially the life of an adventurer.
What would they? A reluctant adventurer, though they be.
All right. Now for Sarah, uh, can you talk about your inspiration for Galena? We don't know a lot about her yet, but I feel like this is such an interesting character. Uh, where did that come from?
I think somebody guessed in chat the night we were playing that I got inspiration for her from the movie Tangled. So
Well,
Rapunzel.
yes, yes, that definitely showed in some parts there. Uh, I guess are there other details of the backstory that, again, a lot of that should come out in game, but
He's
like, are there
not
other?
just copy and pasted, if that's what you're asking. I didn't just take the movie Tangled and then bam, replace Rapunzel with Galena. I didn't do that, but you can definitely tell there was inspiration there for her.
Yeah, yeah. But I guess I was asking any other sources of inspiration that hit you.
Mm, nothing major. I mean, the whole her dress came about just because I already have that dress is a costume and I wanted to wear it for a character in a game. So that's the reason why she wears those clothes. And then um so just random stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I guess one follow up to that, not exactly related, but looking ahead, what are some things you're excited to do with her? Uh,
I picked some spells that I'm excited to try out.
mhm.
And
In sorry, continue.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, in my head, I jokingly said cast spells, and that was the thing you mentioned.
Yeah. I have some spells that I'm looking forward to trying out. Um Right now I'm just interested to see where it all goes. And now that I know that she's the key to something important, I want to know how that's going to work.
Yeah, I think that's something a good DM like Patrick will do in these longer campaigns. Your character is important, right? That's just how it should be. Like I think about, we in a lot of other stories, people talk about plot armor, right? Like that person should have totally died in that situation. The only reason they survived plot armor, but like I don't really tell the stories of the people who died so much.
Kind of hard to do that when you're, dead.
Like, I mean, sure, so definitely death can happen, but if the story's not good, then who's gonna write it? Like, why would you do that? We're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah. If the
we're not
story is
writing
not
about
exactly, if the story is not yet finished, then like death. I mean, I guess in certain cases,
in
maybe
D and
it's
D. It's
not
a
the end
little
of the
different,
story,
but
but
yeah, yeah. So I think it's awesome that when a DM can make that happen for the players, right? Like you are the heroes. We wouldn't be playing like there are definitely some people who prefer a little more like low key intrigue kind of campaign or something like that. Uh, but usually you end up being the heroes of the world, like or even the multiverse, right? You're not just playing randos on the street, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I definitely think yeah, it makes sense that he's got big plans. Um, okay, let's go to another question for Ian here. Um, so Piotr now has bounty hunters coming after him. What's the plan? Uh,
uh, I don't know. Yep. I mean, good question. I kind of let you guys peek behind the curtain a little bit. I haven't really talked to Patrick about this, which we sometimes we don't script anything really, but we kind of touch base. We are performing and such. So I haven't really touched base with Patrick. That whole thing, I just asked on a whim, or Piotr, I guess, asked on a whim that question to Maeve because I was like, I'm never gonna freaking get my stinking question because I can never think of anything that seems important enough. And so that's how that all happened. Had I not had that like impulse in that exact moment, I would have. I never would have known. That would have been hecka interesting. So
Well,
Like, yeah,
I mean,
who
it would have,
me? How did you?
but I mean, it would have made for an interesting scene that all of a sudden there are these bounty hunters that show up, and maybe that would like hint at the possibility of more coming in the future or something. But it would have just
Mhm.
been a scene with those bounty hunters, at least, right? Just either they kill you or you kill them. It's going to
Yeah,
end there, most likely. Maybe they'll run away. But now we get the whole lead up to that of just being like, where are they going to show up? Where are they going to show up? Wait.
like every time they see some shadowy figure in the back of a tavern, they're gonna be like, "Crap, that's him," and then they're gonna leave in a hurry.
Well, oh, I can't remember. Did Piotr get a good look at them? Like he'd probably be able to recognize them if they weren't
Mhm.
cloaked or stuff.
They were all no, because I think they were all bathed in shadow.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure everybody in that room. I don't think he could see any of their faces.
I always feel like I need to study more before I come into these
I
rehash
I
sessions.
meant I meant to re-listen to that whole like at least the last half of that um that episode. I didn't do it. But yeah, Lydia confirmed she doesn't even think he saw their faces. Yeah, okay. Yeah, their faces were distorted. So um sorry, I'm just reading chat here. Yeah, so the only people he recognized there were Katya's parents and the boyar. Everybody else, their faces were obscured, so he don't know who they be.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Um. Well, yeah. In terms of how that can definitely make things interesting as well. Again for Ian, was a bit of a long question, but the party has now failed to stop two sacrifices, both resulting in deaths of people in or close to the party. The only current lead on any other sacrifices being in Vinhelm. Are there people there that Piotr cares about, and who would Piotr be most afraid to lose from his past?
From his past?
People in Vinhelm, yes.
Yeah. Um People to whom he is attached. His family, his parents, he's got brothers, and a sister. I need to check my notes on that. Um, but yeah, obviously his family. Uh, he had, I guess, kind of professional relationships with a lot of people um, in Vinhelm. That's not as strong of a tie as, say, a friendship, but obviously, generally speaking, it's always even if tragically so oh, sorry, even if shallowly slow, it's tragic when you think of somebody with whom you spend a lot of time, had a lot of interaction, who dies. um it's like it's something that's happened to me a lot over the last several years. Is just people I knew in high school have passed away from various things, and it's always just kind of a weird, I guess, to put it in a weird way. Fortunately, I guess for me, that's probably not the right word, but they weren't people I was super close to. But at the same time, like I could recall conversations I had with them and things like that. So um, definitely not something Piotr is looking forward to, particularly if those are people who are more close to him. But yes, there are definitely people he would prefer not to have dead.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and again, for our audience, just because I know based on what Lydia says when you were talking about, bouncing things with Patrick and stuff, right? We aren't scripting anything out. It's more just like, oh, what are some of your ideas on what you would like to see or how you would like this to go? And maybe we'll do something, but it seems to me more like helping Patrick plan
Exactly.
for going
Like
forward.
to set up the situations where I can kind of act out or play my part as Piotr to
Yeah.
tell that part of the story.
Yeah, and so I imagine that as you guys get closer to Vinhelm, you may have some more conversations about like, okay, so here are the people that you really knew there or something. Like expand out that those characters in terms of now Ian knows what Piotr knows about those people.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. I don't Yeah, I had on the old show that Lydia used to run before Homebrew Hall consolidated. We had an episode where we went to my home village, and it was like for the 2 weeks prior to that, we were just going back and forth of like, okay, who's actually in this village? I know there's our chieftainess and my mentor. That was all that I had in my backstory. So we had definitely had conversations fleshing out who else was there.
And
Um,
it's like, like there are people in Vinhelm, um, and just people in Piotr's backstories. It's hard for at least me to keep a hold of because they haven't been a focus of the narrative anyway. And the 6 months that we've been playing, or geez, it's been 10 months. So yeah, there's things that need to be refreshed on. Maybe I have a little bit of a different idea about things. Who knows? And since those things haven't been addressed, maybe whatever. There I go, rambling again.
well, yeah, there's so many interesting story beats coming up. Back to Sarah, and we've talked about this a bit, but is there more to like if it's going to be spoilers, then we don't want to get into spoilers. But is there anything more to why Galena chose to join the party? Like, is it just boredom and hey, these guys are interesting, or
Well, that was certainly, well, boredom is why she left her tower. Well,
Mhm.
part of it. Even that's not completely all of it. Part of it. But as for joining the party, yeah, it was being chased by raiders with axes, and the party was capable enough to stop that. She's decided maybe having someone to watch my back would be a good thing. And then uh, Corvet's golden eyes got us access to the city when she wouldn't have been able to get in by herself. And then she got to go into the castle, which she also wouldn't have been allowed in there. So she figures if I stick with them, I can see more things. And she's trying to experience and see more things. Not exactly as quickly as possible, because I said her grasp of time isn't that great, but it seems like to her that she needs to try and do these things quickly. So yeah, she doesn't know that some fae told them that she has to stay. As far as she knows, if she finds them annoying, or if it's no longer interesting to hang out with them, she feels she can just walk away from them anytime she wants.
yeah, yeah. Well, again, we've talked about how that can change and likely will. Um, but that makes sense. That's definitely a cohesive enough set of reasons. Um, Again, I'm so interested in getting to know Galena better. Well, we've got one more question, and this is for both of you. And it also kind of involves this joining the party. Um, you as players, how do you feel about this forced bond between the two characters? And how do you see that going uh, in the future? Because I mean, we
Sarah, go
talked
ahead.
about. Oh, I guess I'll just say
Oh,
we talked about how Galena might have some kind of different reaction to first learning about this thing with Maeve and not even necessarily believing that Pyotr's actually getting headaches or whatever. But eventually there will be an understanding. And yeah, I guess just any future thoughts about how you think that's going to be working out.
I, as a player, found it hilarious that night. I think it's gonna be really fun.
yeah, same. I thought it was hilarious. I was pretty giddy with like the prospect of because I mean, obviously, I knew that Sarah was going to be joining us that session, and when Maeve brought up, "Hey, there's a woman, and you'll know when you find her," and or like, "This is what she looks like. Um, make sure you're always with her," whatever she said. Don't let her out of your sight, something like that. Um, I was like, "Oh, so that's who Sarah is, and that's how, or I guess Galena, and that's how we're going to be introduced to her." And I was like, and immediately I just kind of got to work thinking of like, how would Piotr, like, how is Piotr going to do this? And I hadn't come to that conclusion, which is, where the word salad came from. And I hope you liked it. Because there was a lot of kale in that salad, and there was some raisins. It's a lot of salad stuff.
Uh, Definitely, I thought it was a great way to just like I feel like that kind of speech that Piotr gave with its disjointedness and all like I feel like that worked very well with Galena's character. I don't know.
Yeah, I had no idea. Like, yeah, that gelled so well.
Yeah,
It was a good way of showing that your suave, smooth bard was caught completely off guard. And her mother had warned her about bards. You were not what she was expecting.
She's like, he's fine. His mom worried me about bards, and I don't know what she was talking about. They're idiots. They just don't know how to talk.
yeah. But so do you all think you're gonna end up like do you think the fact that Piotr has this requirement is gonna like change that dynamic between the two of them going forward versus if they were just if they didn't have that in the party?
They're going to be forced to be together around each other. So they're either going to become great friends or one of them's going to off the other one. Who knows?
Violence or friendship? Pick your choice. Yeah, because you asked or somebody asked if I think or if we think that that dynamic is going to change. I don't know so much that the dynamic has been solidified as of yet. So I'm excited to see what that evolves into. the potentiality for hijinks is basically infinite, and I love it. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, all right. Thank you both for being here. Thanks everyone in the audience for joining us. Um, quick reminders about our announcements that we have this Friday, the beginning of Heroic Tales, and next week, Thursday, not Wednesday, is Ready to Roll. Hope everyone has a great night, and we'll catch you next round.
see you
Bye.
guys.